Greetings, I am Harriet Martineau, often remembered as the first woman sociologist, a pioneer of social science, and a writer who dared to study society in all its complexity. I spoke when women were expected to stay silent, and I listened closely to the world, even as I lost my hearing. Welcome to Socio-Exploration. In this journey, I'll share with you the story of my life, from my early struggles to my final years, and how I dedicated myself to understanding the moral and material fabric of human society. I was born on June 12, 1802, in Norwich, England, into a respected but financially unstable Unitarian family. Ours was a home of intellect and integrity. Yet from a young age, I faced challenges that would shape the course of my thinking: chronic illness, social exclusion, and progressive deafness. But these trials became the tools of my insight. I learned to observe deeply, to write clearly, and to think independently. I received much of my education at home, reading voraciously and questioning everything, especially injustice. My early writing appeared in Unitarian journals, where I explored religion, morality, and the place of women in society. But it was economic hardship after my father's death that pushed me into full-time writing. I had no inheritance, no marriage prospects, only my pen and my principles. In 1832, I published Illustrations of Political Economy, a series of fictional tales explaining the new and often harsh realities of capitalism and labor. These stories made me famous, and more importantly, they made economic theory understandable to the working classes. I believed that if people were to live under economic laws, they should at least understand them. Soon after, I traveled to the United States, where I spent 2 years observing American society. I wrote Society in America, 1837, and Retrospect of Western Travel, where I spoke candidly about slavery, women's rights, class inequality, and democratic hypocrisy. I admired the American spirit, but I could not ignore the oppression beneath its ideals. I believed sociology must be rooted in morality and observation. To truly understand a nation, I said, you must study not just its laws, but its homes, schools, churches, prisons, and treatment of women and the poor. My book, How to Observe Morals and Manners, 1838, laid the groundwork for what you now call sociological method. Though illness often forced me into retreat, my mind never stopped. I wrote on education, health, religion, philosophy, and translated Auguste Comte's positive philosophy into English, helping spread his ideas across the English-speaking world. Yet I did not follow him blindly. I offered my own interpretations, guided always by reason and conscience. In my later years, I withdrew to Ambleside in the Lake District, where I continued to write essays on politics, ethics, and social change. I remained outspoken against empire, against inequality, and in defense of secularism and reform. I passed away on June 27, 1876, after a long and thoughtful life. I had no titles, no formal honors, but I left behind something far greater: a legacy of speaking truth, of observing carefully, and of believing that society could and should be improved. Throughout my life, I believed that to study society is not merely to collect facts or describe customs. It is to understand the moral pulse beneath the surface. Sociology, to me, was a science of both conscience and observation, and here I share with you the guiding ideas that shaped my work. 1. On morals and manners. To understand any society, we must begin with two things: its morals and its manners. By morals, I mean the values and principles a society claims to live by, its sense of right and wrong. By manners, I refer to the actual behaviors and customs we can observe: how people treat one another, how laws are enforced, how daily life unfolds. When a nation preaches liberty but holds slaves. When it praises virtue but denies women education. We see a clear contradiction between morals and manners. As a sociologist, I found these contradictions not only revealing, but urgent. They tell us where power resides and where reform is most needed. 2. on observation and method. I was not content with opinion. I believed in systematic, truthful observation. A sociologist must learn to see what others overlook, to listen where society is silent, and to document life with honesty. I urged my fellow observers to look beyond laws and governments. The true character of a people is found in their homes, their schools, their markets, their treatment of the poor, the sick, the enslaved, and the voiceless. I believed we must travel, compare, and study carefully, always keeping in mind our own biases. The task of sociology is not only to record facts, but to reveal meanings. 3. On hypocrisy in democratic societies. I was often troubled by the discrepancy between democratic ideals and social reality. I saw nations that claimed liberty, yet permitted slavery. I saw governments that spoke of equality, yet excluded women and the poor from public life. I believed that no society deserves to call itself just or free if it denies dignity and rights to any portion of its people. To study such a society, we must not only ask what laws exist, but for whom they exist and who is left out. 4. On the rights and role of women. As a woman, I felt the weight of structural injustice from early on. I believed that gender is a central force in shaping social life, and no true understanding of society is complete without examining the conditions of women. Women have long been denied, not because of inability, but because of custom and control. I spoke often and wrote widely on the need for women's education, legal independence, and public participation. I insisted that a nation cannot be whole when half its citizens are silenced. 5. On the purpose of sociology. To me, sociology was never just about knowledge. It was about conscience. I believed that to study society is to take responsibility for its future. A sociologist must be both a witness and a critic, one who not only sees the world as it is, but also imagines what it might become. My writings sought not just to explain social life, but to improve it, to awaken others to injustice, and to inspire reform based on truth and empathy. Throughout my life, I used the written word not only as a means of survival, but as a weapon for truth, clarity, and reform. My pen became my platform in a world that too often denied women a voice. Here, I share the works that defined my contribution to the emerging science of society and to the cause of justice. 1. Illustrations of Political Economy, 1832-1834. This was my breakthrough, a series of 25 short stories that explained complex economic principles to ordinary readers. At the time, political economy was seen as dry and inaccessible. But I believed that people have the right to understand the forces that shape their lives, especially the working class. So I used fiction to illuminate real issues: poverty, overpopulation, wages, strikes, charity, and poor laws. These stories gained immense popularity and brought economics into the public conversation. In doing so, I made political economy a tool for the people, not just the elite. 2. Society in America, 1837. After visiting the United States for 2 years, I wrote this detailed critique of American society. While I admired the country's ideals of liberty and democracy, I could not ignore its contradictions: slavery, gender inequality, and systemic injustice. In this work, I exposed the moral hypocrisy of a nation that celebrated freedom while denying it to many. I asked hard questions. Why are women excluded from political rights? How can slavery exist in a land of liberty? Society in America was not just a travelogue. It was an early and bold example of comparative sociology. 3. How to Observe Morals and Manners, 1838. This was my guidebook for sociologists, written before the discipline even had a name. I believed that to study society properly, one must observe both morals, what people believe, and manners, what people do. You cannot judge a society by its laws alone. You must look at daily life, private relationships, and cultural contradictions. I encouraged future observers to be disciplined, neutral, and above all, morally aware. This was an early articulation of sociological method, emphasizing empathy, fieldwork, and critical inquiry. 4. Retrospect of Western Travel, 1838. This was my personal reflection on American life, written after I returned to England. While society in America was more analytical, retrospect offered a more narrative and intimate account of what I witnessed: racism, hospitality, domestic life, and the rough energy of a young republic. It helped British readers understand the American experiment and its flaws. I hope to spark not condemnation, but reflection and reform on both sides of the Atlantic. 5. Translating Comte's Positive Philosophy, 1853. Though I had long developed my own sociological thinking, I recognized the significance of Auguste Comte's ideas. I translated and condensed his Cours de philosophie positive into English, making his positivist vision accessible to English-speaking readers. But I was not merely a translator. I added my own analysis and commentary, challenging some of his patriarchal views and reinforcing the need for moral as well as scientific insight in sociology. In many ways, I helped bring Comte's theories to life, but gave them my own ethical dimension. 6. Deerbrook, 1839, and other novels. Though my heart was always in social science, I also wrote novels like Deerbrook, which explored themes of class, gender, and moral responsibility in the context of English domestic life. Fiction, I believed, was not a retreat from truth. It was a means of dramatizing it. 7. Letters on the Laws of Man's Nature and Development, 1851. In this radical philosophical work, written as a dialogue with physician Henry G. Atkinson, I expressed my unorthodox views on religion, morality, and human development. I questioned traditional theology and argued for a secular, rational understanding of human nature. This work caused much controversy, but I remained unshaken. I believed that truth must never be silenced by tradition.
I observed because I cared. I criticized because I believed society could do better, and I wrote because silence has never served the oppressed. Do like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for further notifications. Thank you, and have a great day.